In Greece, the housing crisis does not always feel like a market. It feels like a percentage, a line you cross and cannot uncross. Greece sits at the top of Europe for housing cost overburden, meaning more people than anywhere else are pushed into a situation where housing eats more than 40% of their disposable income. That is not expensive. That is survival math. And survival math changes a person. You stop thinking about what you want. You start thinking about what you can cut. Food, transport, heating, medicine, sleep. Because when the rent takes the first bite, the rest of life becomes leftovers. From the outside, Greece can look like light. Sea air, balconies, crowded streets. But the crisis isn't visible in the view. It's in the inside of the body. The tightness when you open your bank app, the pause before you turn on the heater. The shame of counting coins like you're back in a different life. In Greece, the housing crisis is not just about finding a place. It's about keeping one without disappearing. You feel it in the search. Listings that look normal. Until you do the math. A deposit that empties what you worked for. A landlord who can choose anyone because there is always someone behind you. And that is where the market becomes cruel. Not loud cruel, quiet cruel. Because you do not get told no with a fight. You get told no with silence. No reply. No viewing. No key. Or worse, you get a viewing and realize it is not a viewing. It is selection. People standing in a hallway, people looking at the same walls, people pretending they are calm while their stomachs tighten. Everyone trying to look like the safest tenant, because in a shortage, the safest tenant wins. And once the market becomes a filter, renters learn a rule that should never exist in normal life. Don't be difficult. Don't complain too loudly. Don't ask too many questions. Don't mention problems too early, because you do not want to be replaced. Now the crisis becomes physical, not in chaos, in square meters. In Greece's pressured areas, small space living is not a design trend. For many people, it becomes compression. A loft bed is not clever. It is what happens when adulthood is forced into a room that was not built for a future. A wall desk is not minimalist. It is the last surface left where your life can function without sitting on your bed. Storage walls are not style. They are evidence. Evidence that the space cannot hold a normal life. So your life must fold. These are not solutions. They are coping. Because the alternative is not better. The alternative is losing the address. And in Greece, losing the address can mean something darker than inconvenience. It can mean returning to family, not because you want to, but because you have no other option. It can mean delaying adulthood. It can mean delaying children. It can mean delaying relationships. It can mean delaying life. Not for a year, for an unknown length of time. Now, here's the part that locals recognize instantly. A lot of this pressure is not happening in a vacuum. Greece is a country people move through, a country people visit, a country where short stays can pull housing out of long-term life. When a home becomes more profitable as a short stay than as a long stay, the market starts to behave like a business plan, and the renter becomes the weakest bidder in the room, because your life is year-round. But the demand that competes with you can be seasonal, fast, and higher paying. So housing turns into a tide, and renters are the ones drowning in it. Now, the unfair comparison that hits hardest. A home is supposed to be the base layer, the stable ground under everything. But when the base layer becomes unaffordable, everything above it becomes unstable. Work becomes harder because you're exhausted. Health becomes harder because you're stressed. Relationships become harder because you can't promise stability. And that's why the crisis feels so heavy in Greece. It's not only financial, it's psychological. It teaches people that the future is fragile. So why does it feel like this? Not slogans, not blame, just repeating forces. First, wages and housing costs collide. When housing costs rise faster than incomes, the gap doesn't stay economic. It becomes emotional. Because you can work full-time and still feel like shelter is winning. Second, demand concentrates. Opportunity, services, transport, and education pull people into the same areas. When too many people need the same streets, housing becomes a choke point. Third, scarcity turns selection into silence. Landlords and agents can choose from many acceptable tenants. So renters become files, and files get filtered. Fourth, housing becomes an asset under pressure. When shelter behaves like a financial product, the human purpose of housing becomes secondary. And renters feel that as powerlessness. Now the question every crisis creates: what is the government doing? Here's what exists on paper. Greece has a housing benefit scheme for low-income households renting their main residence. It's a means-tested rent subsidy designed to reduce housing cost pressure for those most exposed. There have also been announced measures aimed at increasing supply and cooling pressure, including incentives connected to renovations and development, and curbs targeted at short-term rentals in places where housing has been pulled into the tourist market. So yes, support exists. Packages exist. Tools exist. On paper, the system is moving. But renters don't live on paper. They live in outcomes. And the outcome many people recognize in Greece is still this: housing eats too much of life. When your housing cost crosses that 40% line, it doesn't just take money. It takes breathing room. It takes dignity. It takes the ability to plan. So people adapt the only way humans can under pressure. They live smaller. They share more. They accept less. They stay quiet. They turn their life into a set of compromises. And the more compromises you accept, the more normal it starts to feel. Until one day, you realize the most disturbing part of all. You're not asking for comfort. You're asking for shelter. And even that feels like too much. So here's the ending that should sit heavy. When housing costs take almost half your life, what happens to everyone who is forced to live on the other half? Subscribe to follow this series, country by country, because this isn't one place. It's a pattern.